All right, welcome to Halitics. And one of the things I really liked about radio, by the way, happy Monday. It is the 24th of April, and we've had a beautiful spring recently here in Maryland. Cold, cool evenings, and just a beautiful azalea spring. So, very happy about that, and looking forward to some more lovely sleeping weather as well. Hope it's nice in your part of the country. One of the things I really like, just to get back into where I started when I did radio, was I didn't really have to worry about my appearance. And you can tell that I have continued that practice, not to worry about my appearance when I come on to broadcast to you. Maybe I need to do a little bit better there. We'll see. If you have any comments, let me know. You can comment on the streams. And there's plenty of places to do so, or send me a text, send me an email. Hal Ginsberg 1963 at gmail.com. But best place to reach me is just right at Halitics on YouTube. So we're going to talk about, a lot of things this morning. And I will have guests throughout the week. Today is just you and I. I hope you'll join me. You can call in at any time, 240-363-7190. I believe, hopefully, yes, the phones should, that's the word, the phones should, in fact, be working for you. So the first topic is going to be Marianne Williamson. I believe firmly we need an alternative to the party duopoly. I'm so disappointed that both of the announced challengers, purportedly, presumably from the left against President Biden. Of course, we have challengers from the right, Trump and what's the guy's name from Florida? DeSantis. And I'm hoping to speak to my son about DeSantis, too. He covers Congress for the Daily Caller, and he has been covering the DeSantis campaign as well. So I'm hoping to talk to my son about the DeSantis campaign with you. So we'll get into that maybe later in the week. So there are challengers we know from the right. The only challengers so far announced from the left are challenging Biden within the Democratic Party. And to me, that's insufficient. We need an alternative to the duopoly. Both parties are against you. Both parties are against poor, struggling, and working Americans and the middle class. They are there to serve the interests of the financial, corporate elites. And pretty much that's it. And military. So if you're not in that category, they're not working for you. I find it very disappointing that both Marianne Williamson and to a much greater degree RFK, who I do view in many ways as a legitimate challenger, although in some ways he's not. He really doesn't have any, as far as I know, no experience in elected office. I want people who've won some races. I really do. I don't want people who are they're gadflies. They don't really seem to be knowledgeable. Politics is something you need to know about. I'm not saying that you have to be someone who's been sucking at the teat of big government for the past 50 years like Joe Biden and promoting corporate interests throughout that time. Of course not. I don't want that at all. But I do think some experience in elected office, both from the perspective of a legislator and an executive, is really important. So I'm not thrilled that, in fact, I'm very disappointed that both RFK and Marianne Williamson, as far as I know, have never been elected to any offices. That's a big strike, right? That's a big strike against both of them. I've talked many times about other reasons I don't particularly like the candidacy of Marianne Williamson, but we're going to feature her this morning because she was a guest, and I give all the credit in the world to the Progressive Democrats of America. As you know, I've been affiliated with for many years now, almost half a decade, almost that many years, with the organization Our Revolution, including as a paid staffer for Our Revolution for 4 years, and also an organizer for Our Revolution Maryland for now almost 5, and I continue to serve in that post, but not as a paid staffer for Our Revolution. I resigned at the beginning of this year from that job. I give PDA a lot of credit for having Williamson on as their guest yesterday. I hope, and I've urged them to have on RFK Jr. I assume they will. I have no reason to think they will not. I was hoping that our evolution would also consider having RFK Jr. on. This request, this suggestion was met with raspberries. The idea, I guess, or I know, is that he has been just neutered by the media. I mean, has to take responsibility. His anti-vaxxer stance, which he's held for many years, I think it's truly heartfelt, is also pretty much nuts. I mean, there are good reasons to be suspicious of Big Pharma. They are corrupt. They are not on your side, but there just isn't evidence to support the theory that vaccines are harmful. They are not. They are life-saving. It's just that simple. Now, was the COVID vaccine overblown? Its effectiveness, trumpeted and exaggerated? Absolutely. Were there some dangers associated with taking it? Probably. It appears that some people did suffer injuries. In fact, there were some deaths. It was a little bit of a few deaths early on. So that is the result of Big Pharma rushing a product to market, profiting off of a global pandemic, which they very well may be responsible for. Those are great reasons to be suspicious of Big Pharma, to challenge them, to question our entire healthcare system. In fact, we shouldn't just question it. We need to redo it. We need to tear down what we have now and rebuild something that's truly government controlled and operated. But all that said, while it explains the anti-vaxxer sentiment, while it becomes very explicit why so many people would be suspicious, there simply isn't science behind RFK's long-time public criticism and skepticism of vaccines themselves. He's just wrong. And that's a big, big problem. It really is. But if you just refuse to support him and you write him off completely for that one reason, if that's your litmus test, and I get it, then I don't know how you can possibly support Joe Biden. I mean, he has failed so many litmus tests over time. Supporting, he greased the skids for the Iraq War, which has been probably our greatest foreign policy blunder, mistake, disaster since Vietnam. He was one of the major movers behind privatizing student debt, which has destroyed lives. He's a huge ally of the usurers in the credit card industry, where they can charge, 29, 30, some extraordinary amount on your credit card debt. Again, destroying lives. There's just simply no way to be somebody who votes with a series of litmus tests like, I'm not going to support RFK because of his anti-vaxxer stance, without then refusing to support Joe Biden. You can't do that. You have to be willing to look at an entire candidate in their position. I believe, on balance, the policies that RFK espouses are better than those of either Marianne Williamson or Joe Biden. And I have a problem with Marianne Williamson beyond that, because I don't, like the way she's made her money, which is with these kind of spiritualism and kind of, I don't even know what you call it, self-help books, which I think are very, very counterproductive. But she did make some good points last night on the PDA Progressive Town Hall. So let's listen to them.
Got it. Now, this is the thing. If we have a Democratic candidate in 2024 who apparently, because Biden theoretically, from what you read, he's going to make his announcement through a video this week, that things are really doing pretty good. We're going to have an infrastructure deal, and people are going to start feeling the effects of this better economy, versus Trump, who will come back and say that the people are being screwed, which he did last time. For us to have a Democratic nominee in 2024 whose basic message is that the economy is doing pretty good, that is contrary to the visceral experience of the majority of Americans. We have 64% of Americans who live paycheck to paycheck. We have 60% of Americans who couldn't afford to absorb a $400 unexpected expenditure. And I'll tell you something else. This was in Market Watch the other day. 39% of Americans, 39% of Americans now report that they have skipped meals to 39%, and 44% of millennials have skipped meals to pay their rent. And this is the richest country in the world. So,
all right. So let me get back there. She's right. I mean, that's important stuff. That's what Democrats need to be talking about, and more than just talking about. And this is again why I guess I have the biggest. I mean, it goes right to that again. Williamson talks a great game, and I'm not going to play. She was on for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. I give, again, PDA, nice job. Great to have her on. She doesn't really come up with the solutions. She doesn't talk about them on that program. I think she may mention universal single payer healthcare, which we certainly, that's a no brainer, right? I mean, if you're not for that, to me is a litmus test. If you're not going to embrace the obvious solution to our healthcare and many other challenges as well, which is universal single payer, Medicare for all, call it what you will, I'm not going to, it's going to be very hard for me to support you. I might vote for you, hold my nose, but that to me is kind of your litmus test right there, right? People say, well, I can't support RFK and he's I don't know, because he's an anti-vaxxer and we're a laughingstock. I've heard that we'll be a laughingstock if we support him. So my response is, does that mean if it's RFK versus Trump, you're not going to vote for RFK? Right? I mean, at some point you do have to, if you don't want to say lesser of two evils, at least vote against the really bad evil. Now, not always. I mean, both sides are, I did not perceive in 2016, and I stand by my perception then. I think it was correct then. I think it's correct now that there was little to choose between the two major party candidates. So if I can't see daylight between them, when I rate them on a scale of 1 to 100, if they're both 20s or 10s or whatever they are, I'm not going to vote for either one. I think RFK Jr. would be a better president at this point. From what I know, from what I understand, he would be a better president than anyone else who's announced they're running for president. I think we should support him. I thought Marianne Williamson made some good points. I think that I love the fact that she's talking about economic injustice, but there are factors which we'll hear from right now, which to my way of thinking, pretty much my litmus test is like, no, I can't support you based on this.
I'm sure you and I don't agree about this. However, I believe I know very, very progressive people, not only in the United States, but in Europe particularly, who agree with me on this. I want a negotiated settlement in which Ukraine continues to exist. I'm sorry, when you have the nation of Finland.
All right, I'm just going to stop it right there. So she's responding to a questioner at the PDA town hall. This is, by the way, Marianne Williamson, if you were wondering, who is challenging Joe Biden, and props to her for doing that, challenging Joe Biden for the nomination next year. This is coming up. In less than a year, there are going to be primaries. If folks are wondering, well, why are you talking about the Democratic primaries now? Why are you talking about the competition? Biden's only been president for a little over 2 years. It's true. He has only been president for a little over 2 years, but the nominations process begins in less than 1 year. It's crazy. It's so long. It's so overdrawn. It's so drawn out. And of course, that does benefit big money. You need a huge amount of money to run for president. And so that's why we have it this way, because you have to be rich and powerful, rich and influential to have a real say over who becomes the nominee of either of the two parties. It's just anti-democratic. That's where we are. Anti-democrat with a small d, not the party. The party itself is pro-plutocrat, so I guess it benefits their leaders, their elites. She sets up a false narrative there where she says, I want Ukraine to continue to exist. That's what she says, that the reason she supports continued U.S. support to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars, boots on the ground, we already know that, and just an extraordinary cost to the people in that region. Devastation. The reason we have to do all of that, according to Marianne Williamson, is because she wants Ukraine to continue to exist. But that's a false choice. It's not as though if we don't continue to funnel all that military materiel, Ukraine will cease to exist. In fact, because of our support for the current government in Ukraine, Zelensky, because of our military support, and when I say we, I mean the U.S., but also NATO, that is why Ukraine is not currently existing in any meaningful sense. It's falling apart. It's imploding. There have been opportunities where peace was possible, where we could pressure both sides to negotiate a settlement, to have a ceasefire and at least talk about it, stop the killing. People talk about how the Russian soldiers are raping Ukraine women, and I believe it. War is ugly. War is hell. If you don't want that to happen, then push for a ceasefire. Stop providing more and more means to Ukraine to draw this out. Instead, pressure both sides to sit down and talk, as the Chinese are doing. And in fact, the U.S. has said, Biden has said, Blinken has said, we can't have peace with Russia. That's why this is going on. There have been numerous opportunities. Ceasefire. Keep the lines the way they are. Put down your weapons for now. Talk it out. We're doing just the opposite. Marianne Williamson is promoting a false agenda, a false choice, which is leading to more deaths, more horror, and also empowering the very people she claims she's against and why she's running for president, the neoliberal elites. All right, let's continue if we can with this. Play this a little more from this clip.
Finland, which has been neutral for decades, joining NATO. When I hear the voices of people in Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania and Sweden and Finland, I'm sorry, I take it more seriously than I take a bunch of lefties in America who are talking from the safety of their Twitter accounts.
All right, I find that to be, it's clearly offensive. I mean, clearly, and when you say things like that, oh, I take their voices more seriously than leftists talking from the safety of their Twitter accounts. We have pushed, and has Russia, I'm not saying it's just us. It's a folie à deux. It's crazy, it's madness among two. That's forcing those countries to choose either the West or Russia. And of course they're going to choose the West under those circumstances. I mean, we do have some kinds of freedom here. And they, in Scandinavia, have a real tight safety net. So life is pretty darn good in those countries. The last thing they want is to have a war. The last thing they want is to be taken over by Russia. Better keep things the way they are. And they're afraid now, because what we have done is we have laid down the gauntlet in front of Russia and said, you've got to, defend your sphere of influence with an army, with military. And if they perceive, which they might, whether there's NATO expansion or not, Finland as a possible route by which the West infiltrates Russia, then yes, they are going to start military reprisals there, military incursions into Finland, certainly bolster up the border there. I don't think Finland's in danger. Finland and Russia have fought in the past, and Russia's gotten the worst of it in general. But we are the ones who, by refusing, and Russia is too, I don't want to say it's only one side, but by our refusal to negotiate with Russia, by our saying you're going to have to fight for every inch in Ukraine that you've taken from now until forever. And we're not going to have any kind of a discussion of whether NATO even gets to operate right on your borders. It doesn't even have to be a democracy to be NATO. Turkey is no democracy, and that's a NATO country. So it's understandable what's happening. It's foreseeable. And it's in fact what the Western corporatocracies wanted, and they're getting it. For Williamson to be so dismissive of the progressives on the left who have been right over and over and over about endless war, it's so condescending. It really reflects an embrace of the media elite worldview, the one they foisted on you, the manufacturing consent efforts on their part have really succeeded with her. And that's why I will not support Marianne Williamson for president. Although, again, maybe if the primary comes down to her and Joe Biden, I might vote for her. If the presidential election in November, in about 18 months, comes down to her or Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, maybe I'll vote for her. But it would be a very tough vote. On balance, is she better than Hillary Clinton, for whom I refuse to vote? Yeah, I guess so. She's not as bad. So if that's your litmus test, are they better than Hillary, which is kind of mine if I'm going to vote for them in a general election against a Republican. Are they better than Hillary? I voted for Biden. I don't regret it. Not happy about it. Not proud of it. So what's going on in Ukraine? Williamson's position, as I get it, and I don't think it's hard to understand, is that we've got to, at all costs, fight Russia to protect Ukraine, to have an independent Ukraine, because otherwise an independent Ukraine will disappear. Don't agree with that. But if you're going to take that position, which I think if that is the truth, you can the war is defensible, right? Our support of endless war is defensible if the choice is either Ukraine ceases to exist as an independent nation and becomes a Russian client state. Yes, that's very scary. We don't want that. We don't want Ukraine to be lost, for the people there. Now, there's a lot of problem with Ukraine, but let's look at the cost right now. Is this something you're going to acknowledge? Because if you're going to say, well, we've got to defend Ukraine, we've got to keep this war going, what's the actual situation? And she said, well, I'm not, these people who are in the safety of their homes saying we've got to end the war. What about the people in the safety of their homes who are making billions off the war saying we've got to continue it? What cost are they imposing in Eastern Europe? Millions of people have been uprooted from their homes in Ukraine, which, by the way, is a number that's quite similar in a similarly small country, Iraq, to what happened when we fomented war there. When we destroyed Iraq in 2003, millions of people were displaced. This is the largest and fastest crisis in Europe since World War II. 8 million have fled to neighboring countries as refugees. So it's not just the people of Ukraine now who are being victimized by this endless war, for which we are partly responsible and are not trying to stop, and which Marianne Williamson doesn't want to stop. People in neighboring countries, Poland, Belarus, I don't know, I can't remember all. Was it Romania, I think, is on the border there? They're all having to take in refugees at great cost. Others are stranded. And they don't have, food to eat. They don't have heating. This is the cost of the war that Marianne Williamson supports. I cannot in good faith embrace her as much as I want Biden out of office. All right, you're listening to the Ginsburg Show. I'm Hal. It's Halitics. And I hope you'll click subscribe, actually. If you're watching, do both. If you haven't subscribed yet, the subscribe button is in the bottom right. I've got my blue and white colors there. I don't know. I like that. I think they look nice together. I like the yellow. I've been using pink. I use magenta for my headlines, magenta and yellow. So if you have any thoughts on that, love to hear it. Go ahead, comment in the comment section. I asked the question, if Marianne Williamson is, and this is what I posed on my promo for this, for today's podcast, videocast, live stream. It's a live stream. Is a podcast only audio, or does it also include video? I think there's a difference of opinion on that. Certainly the original podcasts were only audio, but some people, I guess, I think that's just basically audio. This is not a podcast. This is a live stream videocast. Obviously, you watch it anytime. The question, if Marianne Williamson is the answer, what is the question? So if Marianne Williamson is the question to whom should you support her? Who should I support? Okay. Whom should I support in the Democratic primary for president in 2024? If the answer to that question is Marianne Williamson, then why is that the question? It's because Joe Biden is that bad. Anyone but Biden. If you're going to say, I'll vote for Marianne Williamson, what you're saying is, I'll vote for anyone but Biden. And maybe that's fair. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's what we're asking ourselves right now. Is anyone better than Biden who's running for, who would run against him in the Democratic primary? And I kind of say maybe, but she's pretty close to, she's kind of the exception that might prove the rule. In other words, except for her, anyone else who runs for president. And that's not fair, of course. I mean, if, someone like, I don't know, who were some of those really awful candidates who ran in 2020, Michael Bloomberg, Kamala, I went to Wesleyan. I used to talk about that on my show. There were two Wesleyan grads who ran. You might remember either of them. One was, I think, Michael Bennett, and the other was, he's a senator, I think, Michael Bennett or Michael Douglas Bennett. He's still the senator, I believe, one of the two, and the other, former Governor John Hickenlooper. I mean, those guys were awful. So they're probably worse than Biden. But she's pretty close to my, not acceptable line as well. Want to get to a couple of other quick stories here. One, this always catches my, being how I miss beautiful Monterey, California. And so, and I really, I miss all the marine life, the marine mammals there. They're so beautiful, and they're so, I don't know. I just really miss the animals, the sea lions barking. I still remember listening to those sea lions barking, and it was just a nice vibe, right? A really cool vibe. All that you're closer to nature in Monterey than you are in a lot of other places. One of the many beautiful things about that place. So this article caught my eye. I do continue to subscribe to the Herald. It's got its issues, or I shouldn't say I continue. I just re-upped or renewed or restarted, rebooted my subscription. And this caught my eye when they send out a, an invite. You got to join, you got to, come back. And so I saw this, and let me get that whole thing. I want you to be able to see the whole thing in here, because I have some highlighting that you can't see. So I think you can here. So troubled waters. This is from yesterday's Herald. A dangerous time for whales. And there you can see Fran. Fran is a humpback whale. That picture was taken last summer. And the reason I'm highlighting it in this slide, we'll get to that in just a moment. But Fran washed up on shore. She was hit by a ship, one of these giant ships that ply the Pacific um, and sail into the port of San Francisco or port of Oakland. The amount of ships has just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. A large part of that is globalization, and that, of course, is playing into climate change, which is, aggravating climate change. So there's a whole plethora of factors that are all human caused. We have bigger and bigger ships along the coast, sailing from Asia to the U.S. and back. They're going faster and faster. They're bigger and bigger, and they're killing whales. So this massive creature washed up on shore, very intelligent creature, a female. She was a nursing humpback whale named Fran, and it was, a tragedy. And it wasn't just a tragedy for Fran; it was a tragedy for her pup, Aria, or Aria. We'll talk about Aria in a little bit. First, we're going to talk just briefly about the problem and what possible solutions are. And I do want to give the Herald or the Mercury News or whatever, which, by the way, is pretty shameful. I mean, the Mercury News came out against against the Uber, or for that Uber. Remember, there was this was a question of whether Uber workers, Uber employees, and Lyft employees, the Diner Dash people, all those gig economy workers, if they should be considered employees and protected by the laws in California, minimum wage laws and other laws that protect employees. And Uber, Diner Dash, Lyft, and others waged a very dishonest campaign claiming that this would raise huge major cost increases for anyone who uses those services, which was a load of crap. And the Mercury News, which is neo-lib to the core, supported the big Silicon Valley, big tech corporations that have reduced wages, reduced income for, obviously cab drivers, taxi drivers who compete with the Lyft and Uber, and the restaurants as well that now have to pay, a fee, a service fee, or reduce what they charge customers so that they can have DoorDash deliver for them. But the Mercury News didn't care. They just went ahead and supported the tech companies and helped defeat a very, helped overturn, reverse a really good law, which would have meant a better quality of life for millions, or at least hundreds of thousands of Californians working for these companies. So the Mercury News is really a problem, a big problem. But they did cover this story. This was actually, I think, originated in the Mercury News. The one about Aria, the humpback whale, which is the feel-good story we'll get to a little later in the program. By the way, call if you can, 240-283-70, no, I got the wrong number, 240-363-7190, 240-363-7190. So according to NOAA, the population of gray whales has dropped 40%, almost half as many in just 8 years. Humpback and blue whales are still endangered. Unclear whether their population are dropping from this article. And why? Why are we losing these whales? Well, part of the reason is vessel strikes, which are the largest single cause of death, at least human caused. I mean, whales die because they get old, and maybe some orcas go and catch one of them and stuff. And so there are other causes, but humans cause a lot of deaths. Whales get tangled up in lines. Whales get murdered by whalers deliberately. They go out and they shoot them. They harpoon them. It's horrible, cruel. They might starve, they might get caught in, they might not. There's a variety of reasons whales can die that are human caused, but the biggest reason right now, as we know, is getting hit by a ship. And the problem there is getting worse because more and more of the food that they eat, whether it's the krill or shrimp or whatever, is closer to shore due to climate cataclysm. I'm not sure why. I was trying to figure that out. Well, why would that be? I mean, why would there be? I don't know. But apparently, according to that, I'm sure Mercury News knows this. So we're just killing these animals. The Mercury News, I want to give credit in another way. The headline is that there's a real solution. There is a solution to this problem. And they talk about it. The solution is we have to have speed limits. Wherever there are a lot of ships, and usually it's where entrances to harbors, which is where these whales congregate, you have to have ships go much slower. If they go slower, the whales have more time to get out of the way, and the ships have more time to, if they see the whale, which they often will because they're huge, they can also adjust course a little more easily. They have more time to adjust course, and they can do so without as much disruption to their activities. So the Monterey Bay Aquarium and NOAA is saying, let's have speed limits. And so far, there have been some voluntary agreements by some companies to tell their captains to drive the ships more slowly, but it's voluntary. There's no penalties if they don't do it. There's no fines, nothing. So whales keep dying. You know me, I'm all about taxing the bads. You want to stop the whales from being killed? What you can do is, first of all, the first thing you do is you start imposing massive tariffs on goods that are manufactured overseas. Because when you do that, you start taking away a lot of the profit from shipping products overseas. So that's one thing we can absolutely do. Less profit from shipping, less shipping. Just that simple. It's just that easy. So that's a major, a really obvious answer. Tax carbon, tax fossil fuels. We raise the price of fossil fuels. Even, first of all, you'll ship less because it costs more, but you'll also drive your ship more slowly. Sail it, I don't know what the right word is. Do you drive it? Pilot it? I'm not sure. Whatever you do, you'll do it less. You'll do it more slowly because gas is expensive. Diesel fuel is expensive. And you're not going to want to burn it up by driving too quickly. So those are two obvious answers to the problem. And, unless we embrace them, the problem ain't going away. It's just that simple. All right. Let's move on to another story here. And this is, I try really hard not to be inoffensive. Okay, so think about that. That's a double negative for you. I try really hard not to be inoffensive. I am not a host who likes to tell people what they want to hear. I'd much rather get into an argument. I'd much rather get into a disagreement with you. By the way, we're having a little bit of an issue with our phones. I'm going to try to get them back up as soon as I can. So I apologize for that. But you can, again, and I'll let you know when we get it back up, when we get our phone back up and running. It's kind of tough because I'm doing this on my own here. But again, I do this, I think the word I used was to rankle in part. I mean, that's not my only purpose, for sure. I really want to build a movement that challenges the Democratic Party. That's my goal. for many people, Barack Obama's a hero. He once was for me. I wrote back in, I don't know when, that, yeah, well, I do know when it was. It was in November of 2008 that I was one of the happiest days of my life was when Barack Obama was elected. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Can you believe it? A progressive black president. He beat the Clinton machine. He beat the neocon John McCain, who not the worst, by far not the worst, but, wow. We're turning over a new leaf. We've got an intellectual president. Because someone who can speak fluently in English. Because who do we have before Obama? W. We have someone who recognizes we need universal health coverage. Has he gone as far as I like? No, but I get it. You want to win. Maybe he wouldn't have won if he had been a little bit farther to the right when he campaigned. So yeah, I was so excited. And the bloom slowly but surely wore off. And I know that irritated some of you, and I got a lot of guff for it. But I can only just say what I say and think what I think and do what I do. The Jacobin here and Liza Featherstone, I believe, this is a very left-wing group, very left-wing media organization, deserves an awful lot of credit for publishing this. You wouldn't see this in the Nation. Even though there are many critics of Obama in the Nation, they're not going to publish this. They don't want to offend donors because the Nation does rely on contributions. And the progressives who are most likely to have money to contribute to the Nation are people who would support President Obama and think he was a pretty darn good president in a lot of ways, and who also embrace identity politics. How can you possibly criticize this black president? How can you possibly say you're being racist? And the Jacobin mag is opening itself up to that very criticism with that headline. But I think if you read the column, if you read the article, I don't know how you can gainsay it. It's, for this exact same reason that I don't think Trump is the worst president of all time, or even close. I identify three I think are clearly worse. So maybe he's the fourth worst. I guess that's one of the worst. I don't know that he is one of he is the fourth worst, but I'm very, very quick to say George W. Bush, Richard Nixon, and Andrew Jackson were worse. I'm pretty sure I put Reagan behind him too, or ahead of him, or however you put that. I don't know. It's just what they did, right? What they did in office, how much harm, how many people did they kill? How many people did they impoverish? Who benefited from their policies, who was harmed by them? That's how I judge. And if I look at Barack Obama and I read the article in Jacobin, I can't disagree. From the look was awful, first of all. Remember, he went and got hundreds of thousands of dollars in speeches to the Carlyle Group right after he left the presidency. The Carlyle Group, which profits from drilling, from fossil fuel extraction. That's a big part of their investments. And he went there and spoke, got hundreds of thousands of dollars, goes windsurfing with Richard Branson, a billionaire. Really didn't do anything to help poor people. Not that I'm aware, didn't speak. Remember what Jimmy Carter, he went and built houses for poor people. W is painting. Obama's embracing global elites. He had an enormous party at his palatial summer home in Martha's Vineyard. Kind of said, oh, well, we'll scale it back because of COVID, then didn't. I mean, he has a right to have his parties. I get it, but again, it looks terrible. It, it's like rubbing the nose, rubbing uh, you're rubbing the nose. What is it? Rubbing your nose in the face of somebody, I guess, of people who are really victims. All right. So someone here says my audio levels are low. I don't think they're that low. I guess it depends on your system. Do you agree? Are my audio levels too low? I can turn up the gain a little bit, maybe the microphone. Um, let me see. So he says he has to run the game. I have never had this. I don't have this problem, but I'm going to go ahead and see if I can boost myself a little bit here. So let's see if does this help, folks? Let's get that up a little bit. All right. So I'm responding in real time to a criticism of my audio levels being too low. Does this resolve the problem? Let's hope so. Big parties, embraces global elites. More importantly than that stuff, I mean, that it's a look, right? It doesn't look good. How about torpedoing Bernie? Both in 2016 when you embraced Hillary, never talks about Bernie. 2020 gathered people to gathered all the candidates, the neo-lib candidates together to all drop out and embrace and endorse Biden. Now look, I don't think Bernie was going to win anyway. I don't think that stopped Bernie from winning because he wasn't going to win in 2020. He had a shot in 2016. Obama could have embraced it. Obama could have said, yes, we need to make life better for poor Australian working people. And Bernie's the candidate to do that. It would have made a huge difference. You know, Bernie's biggest weakness, the reason Bernie didn't win is because he didn't get support from African Americans. Barack Obama could have been the interference for Bernie, and he wasn't. So I think it's very, very fair to criticize Obama for being a bad ex-president. He wasn't a hell of a good president either. All right, I'll be happy to discuss this today or some other day. We're going to get off in about 5 more minutes, but I have a feel-good story. I haven't been doing feel-good stories lately. There hasn't been that much for me to feel good about. But I did mention the poor whale Fran who washed up on the shores of Monterey Bay last year, August. So her daughter Aria, who was nursing at the time, by the way, according to my listener, it's better but still much lower. All right, I'll see if I can boost them for you. I've watched my videos. I get it. If there's a problem, we have to address it. I wonder why it seems lower. I have not noticed that with mine. Do others have? Share it. Their comments are in the live chat. If you're noticing me too low, please comment. I want to hear that. I also want to hear from you if you don't think it's too low. I did notice when I did some editing the other day, yes, the levels look low. So I take that very seriously, and I will do what I can to make sure that they're where they should be. But I want to hear from you if you think they're too low or if you have problems. So this beautiful Aria. There's her tail. You can see Aria's tail. That has been identified as Aria. She was orphaned. I don't know if she was orphaned because I guess orphan is when your dad and mom died. But as I understand it, whale dads don't hang around, right? It's just they mate, they swim off, they leave the mom whale to give birth, and then, I suspect the problem's not the mic itself. Another comment. No, I boosted the level from within the program itself that I'm, the audio, the distribution program, the production program. So she sees her mom killed. She sees her mom run over by a boat. And there was a real palpable fear that this little baby whale, who was still nursing, 6 months old, 7 months old, could not survive without her mother. Somehow she did. She had learned enough from her mom, even despite having the trauma of seeing her killed, alone. My wife asked me yesterday, she said, well, is she with a pod? And I was like, what is a pod? Oh, yeah, there's a pod of whales. It took me a moment to realize that a pod is like a pride of lions, a murder of crows, a pod of whales. So, yes, Aria, and she was named by a marine biologist who said she's like a beautiful melody. Isn't that so nice? I love that. A beautiful melody. So Aria is with a pod. She's got friends. She is an orphan according to the story, but I don't know. Orphan because only the moms take care of her. Feel good story, but I fear there are going to be more orphan whales. There will be more orphan whales. And the problem will get only worse unless we figure out how to have fewer ships plying the waves, and those ships go at a much slower pace, and presumably are smaller too. Everyone have a great afternoon. We will get this audio issue completely controlled. You all have a great day.